Tired of playing the same old meta decks in MTG Standard? Well, today I am going to be showing a bunch of not necessarily jank, but off-meta decks that are performing really well. Either folks have gotten Mythic with on the MTG Arena Standard ladder, or folks have gotten 5-0s in terms of MTGO League. So we did this about a week ago. A lot of folks were looking to kind of keep this a little bit more regular. So while we do the metagame breakdown on the channel, looking at the kind of stock lists, the best performing lists, like the highest volume of games played lists, this one here is going to be focusing on kind of more unique decks, maybe smaller sample sizes, but some cool ideas to kind of shake things up, keep things fresh for you when you're playing Standard. So we'll cover a bunch of deck lists here. We get some of the data from Untapped.gg, what you see on the screen, companion tool that runs alongside Arena's client. Link for it is in the video description if you want to get started, track your games. In terms of the Arena Premium giveaway, I will be doing it on Sunday. So I know a lot of folks have put their comments in, so I'll be randomly selecting the winners and then contacting them individually. We're also going to be looking at some MTGO League data in terms of some 5-0 tournament lists. So kind of jumping into it, popularity right now for this, like the day that it is, you're going to see a lot of Golgari on the ladder, whether it be the Innkeeper combo or the talent combo with Vraska, or just straight mid-range. You're going to see Rakdos Lizards, Domain, Convoke, variations of mono red, whether it be big red, little red, Orzhov Bats, Gruul Aggro, which is pretty much mono red with some pump spells in green, and then Boros Mice kind of make up the meta. But I'll timestamp and paste all these deck lists so you can jump around. So the first list, this is from Kos Mojego 2317. They got into Mythic with this one. It is mono green aggro. Yes, mono green. So what do we get in this set to support mono green? Well, we have Valley Might Caller that gets bigger whenever you cast a frog, rabbit, raccoon, or squirrel. Paw Patch recruits 2 creatures in 1 potentially. So this will come in, it'll trigger the Valley Might Caller. It in itself gives your counters to other creatures you control, so some value there. In the 1-drop slot, otherwise, we have Evolving Adaptive that gets bigger as you play other bigger creatures. Giant Growth as pump effect, Hard-Hitting Question as a fight effect. Bristly Bill puts counters on your creatures when lands come into play. Deep Root Wayfinder, another way to kind of dig for some lands. Hunter's Talent as a fight effect. So notably, this is deal damage as opposed to traditional fight, so it gets around Death Touch, stuff like that. Gives trample, and then could be card advantage. Innkeeper's Talent puts counters, gives ward, and then can double up counters. Keen-Eyed Curator, Graveyard Hate, and could become upwards of a 7/7 if you kind of exile Domain. Not Domain. You exile at least 4 different card types. The word's eluding my mind right now. Overprotect gives you a pump effect, gives you trample, gives you hexproof, gives you indestructible. So protect your big creatures. Quirion Beast Caller gets counters based on other things. Then you have Sharpshooter, 4/4 for 3 mana with reach, and they can blow up enchantments or artifacts as well. A lot of enchantments running around, whether it be the talents or stuff like that. So some flexible main board options. Then we have Season of Gathering, and then your package there. So that is a best of 1 list. Then we have, sorry, that one kind of snuck in there. They didn't even have a sideboard. Most of these will be best of 3. So then we have, this is from Soldes, it's 21-5. And this is a Sultai lands deck. So kind of pinging desert value engine deck. So some of these decks are like self-mill, bring back all your lands. This one here is more just value crime package. So you have the Free Strider Lookout that can get you lands into play whenever you could get a crime, your lands. There's a lot of deserts that ping, which in fact could then trigger the crime. You have Outcaster Greenblade, 3 mana, 1/2. You get to search your library for a basic land or a desert, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle. And then it gets a 1/1 for each desert you control. Potentially could be looking at that frog as well from the new set as a way to put lands into play, but this could become a large creature. The Colossal Rattleworm could have flash since there's so many deserts. Vine Slasher pings, which triggers your prime package. You have the Vadmir that gets bigger, and then just kind of going through, we've seen Bristly Bill again. So it's like a Sultai mid-rangey shell. The Mockingbird can copy Iridescent Vine Slasher. 3 steps ahead can copy your creatures. Bitter Reunion for remove, or Bitter Triumph Go for the Throat as removal. Pillage the Bog could help you find pieces. And then Repulsive Mutation, Counterspell Pump, some Virtues as well mixed in. The rest of the deck, you got Soul Guide Lantern for Graveyard. Hey, change the equation as a cheap counter for red-green decks. Disdainful Stroke for bigger mana decks. Instructor for Herbology, just for the aggressive decks, gives you some life. To be honest, I'd probably just play Cut Downs over this. Glistening Deluge for the Go Wide, Obstinate Spaleoth for the heavy discard, and then the End as a catch-all removal. You probably want Terra Sunder in this sideboard as well. There's a notable, like, being in Sultai colors, Terra Sunder is really flexible. There's so many enchantment-based decks. You may also want to look at something like Nissa as a planeswalker in terms of a sideboard addition. From there, we go to Arsenal's profile. They went 14-5. This is I believe this one was from the Japanese tournament. It is a Naya Legends Annie Joins Up file. So we have Annie Joins Up that comes into play, deals 5 damage to a creature or a planeswalker an opponent controls, legendary enchantment. So drawing multiples isn't the end of the world because it's basically just removal. And then if a triggered ability of a legendary creature you control triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. So what are you trying to do with this deck? Ramp early with like Iron Crag. Breaches can give you multiple triggers, whether it be the treasure tokens, can't block, exile cards play. Loyal Steed can double up on scries. Like if you saddle, you get to kind of blink that creature and then set up for multiple ETBs. There's Watley that can help you find lands. You could transform it, kind of search your for dinos, which can also then help you find a Tali, and then kind of get that value. Even just helping you to kind of thin your deck out of lands has utility. Beza has got like 700 abilities that could potentially trigger double times. Dragonhawk is really cool in this deck because you could double the amount of Dragonhawk ETB triggers, and then the deal damage that you don't cast doubles as well. This can deal like huge amounts of damage in the mid to late game. Roxanne doubles up on the triggers in terms of pinging with Meteorites, which is pretty sweet. And then Atali doubles the cast triggers. Plaza Heroes helps clean up the mana and also can provide protection. Get Lost, Soul Partition as removal in the main. Elspeth Smite for early aggression. Soul Partition again. Lauren for artifact enchantment. Temporary lockdown against the aggro. Urbrass Forge against the black-based kind of mid-range grindy decks or heavy counterspell decks. Season of Burrow is a flexible all-around mid-range card. Then we go to AJ Scremp's profile. They are 37-17 with an Invoke. Oh no, this one's Dimir Control. We got a Invoke Calamity or Reenact Crime deck that's coming up. Don't worry. So Dimir Control. This deck here is, I would like kind of with the control decks, kind of seeing what the win condition is and building around there. This one, pretty stock with just Shieldreds. You have Virtue that's technically a win condition, and then you have your Restless Reef, and then 2 Fountain Ports as your win conditions, and a Myrex. So really kind of light on win conditions, meaning that your opponent's removal main isn't not going to do that much versus your deck. The deck itself has just counter spells, flexible. This technically is a win condition on itself, a 2/2. Basically, you're just going to win with like a random token or something. 3 steps ahead is a counter. Essence Scatter for the creature decks. Go for the Throat, Edicts, Blot Out, all is removal. Notably no cut downs in the main, which is interesting. Just opting for a little bit larger removal. That's a curious inclusion, but interesting nonetheless. Going for a little bit higher on the curve. So there's not really much interaction on one that you'd normally see. Liliana's for kind of the grindier matchups. Liliana is also an interesting one in these control decks where the card's value to you is usually a little higher. It's a card that usually comes in against you, but the Edict might be reasonable. Arena for extra card advantage. Quick Study as more card advantage. Rankle's Prank, flexible spell. The Shieldred's in there. The End is removal. So there's a lot of ways you can just exile cards from your opponent's graveyard or library that they play. Deadly Cover Up, the End kind of effects. The rest for kind of the big mana decks, the mid-range kind of shells. Negates for the counter mid-range to control decks. Domain. Jace good against Domain and kind of the mid-range decks. Phyrexian Obliterator, which is kind of cool in here against the aggro decks. They'll usually board out a lot of removal. You throw down an Obliterator, they cry, and then more Virtues for the aggressive deck. I would probably find space for cut down in here. Probably trim like Rankle's Prank. Maybe the End, kind of trim down. I would probably not play Liliana's, and then maybe just kind of shift down. And then maybe another Jace in the sideboard is good against the domain decks, and playing it to that avenue. Then we go to Izzet Otters. This one's more of a ladder deck that we don't see too often, 57%. Platinum to Mythic, so not high Mythic, but still, if you're looking for kind of a tempo-oriented deck, this list here, you're playing Monastery Swiftspear, you're playing Storm Chaser's Talent, which can make Otters. You have Emberheart Challenger, Slick Shot, so it's more of an Izzet Prowess deck that incidentally has Wizards. Frolicking Familiar can be a ping as well as another kind of creature to grow bigger. You have Into the Flood Maws, Tempo Elements, Might of the Meek as a pump, potentially Trample. This probably should be Monstrous Rage in this deck since you're not huge on mice. That's a notable inclusion there that I would probably make. Shore Up as protection, Blazing Crescendo, Ren's Resolve as card advantage, Slick Sequence as a way to potentially draw some cards as well. Then from the standard MTGO leagues, there's 2 decks I want to highlight. So this deck here from Neber12, I've seen them a couple times on Twitter. They've been doing really well with this. It's a black-white mid-range reanimator deck. So it's leveraging Invasion of Talata, if we all tilt our head because MTGO doesn't reorient. 5 mana. When it enters the battlefield, return target non-battle permanent card from your graveyard to the battlefield. And then with this one here, let's pop that open because I don't remember what the backside does. Creature tokens you control get +1/0 at the beginning of your end step. Create a 1/1 spirit token with flying. So just like an Anthem effect after for your tokens, and could be an engine as well. So this one here, you're using things like Collector's Vault, helps you ramp, helps you set up your draw, gets you to throw the Atraxa is going to be one of your main reanimator. You have Beza, you have Frontier Seeker. This one just basically helps you hit land drops. Notably, this says Aura Plains, not a basic plane, so you can get Meticulous Archive, you can get Shadowy Backstreet in terms of the Surveil lands. This is a Caretaker's Talent deck, but instead of like leveraging the Forge tokens, Collector's Vault makes treasure tokens that also trigger the talent on both turns. Get Lost, Go for the Throat, Lay Down Arms, Sun Falls in here, Archangel Elspeth. So kind of a really interesting shell. You got your Reanimator, your token, you can go over the top with the Atraxa. Sideboards just got cut downs, duresses, Go for the Throats, Jason here. You have Meticulous Archive plus the treasure tokens, plus technically Jace doesn't need more than a blue since you can use Phyrexian. So that's way for kind of like the big mana decks, the domain decks, you can mill them out. Lauren for enchantment and artifact hate. Under the gateway. Another way to destroy non-token artifact or enchantment, or you can incubate. So it gives you some flexibility when you're ahead, so it's not always a dead card, and then temporary lockdown for the aggressive decks. So there's that one there, and then there is another kind of cheat into play Atraxa deck. This one is looking to reenact crime. So exile target non-land card in a graveyard that was put from anywhere this turn, copy it, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. So this deck here, you're looking to use stuff like Collector's Vault or the Matsalansi League, the Great Door, or stuff like Vohar, just things that basically cycle. So you would discard a card, you'd either discard like Reach the Multiverse, you can do Conspiracy Unraveler, you can do Atraxa, and then just reenact crime it, get that value there. To basically for 4 mana cast the 7-drop and kind of go from in terms of overwhelming your opponent. Terror Tide is a sweeper, Cruelty of Gix is another reanimation effect. Long Goodbye, Go for the Throat as removal options along with Harvester of Misery. Sideboard you have Duresses, Glistening Deluge for the Go Wide decks, Jace for mill, Long Goodbye, Negates, and Terror Tide. Super. That's it. Let me know if you got any cool sweet decks, and we'll be back later in the week for more gameplay videos as well as the next kind of wave of weekly meta break. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you have a great one. Stay safe out there.